to the J&K show, teams. We are delighted with our next guest. So let's frame this. In a world where there's so much information, where do you go? Well, we recommend that you tap into one of the best curators in the business. Welcome to the J&K show, Yasmin Shiraz.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good deal. So, listen, I'm absolutely delighted that you're here. Um, and I meant what I said in that opening. There's so much information, there's so much happening, right? And so many of us don't know where to go in terms of who's a good source for that information, and then also getting a particular perspective, which I think you check all those boxes on. So for those that do not know and say they've been living under a rock and or still shut in from COVID days, take a couple of minutes and tell the folks exactly who you are.
Well, my name is Yasmin Shiraz, and I am a former hip hop magazine publisher who then became an author, who then became a TV writer and TV producer. And so my work is always about honoring truth and being authentic and just like keep telling it like it is. And my very first business was Mad Rhythms magazine back in the day, where I interviewed Diddy and Biggie and people like that. And people always came to me because they knew that I was going to be honest. And so now in this generation or iteration of time that we're in, where people, are looking for who can I trust or what have you, I created a show called the Yasmin Breakdown, and I'll take a current news item or what have you, and I just try to be as authentic and as truthful as to what is really going on, so that people can feel like they have somebody to trust. My background is sociology. I have 2 degrees, my bachelor's and master's in sociology with the emphasis in criminology. And so there's always going to be in my work that broader understanding of society and the implications therein. I am a sports lover, so you're going to see during the NFL, you're going to see that Shador post every every couple days. You're just going to see that. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in Delaware. My dad, my mom, my brothers, just 4 of us, and we used to watch sports all the time. So I'm one of them people. I am boycotting the NFL right now, but I am paying attention.
Wow. Okay.
So
Wow.
that's who I am. Yeah.
I love that. And so that, that sociology, criminology background, I think is
Yeah.
interesting because, and maybe that's the hook because often when I see your content and I kind of get drawn in, so because of your background and your education, I think maybe you're providing some of the why, right? And
Yes.
so that's the
Yes.
part. So as people, we can look and judge actions. But we don't know the motives, right? We don't know what's in
Right.
someone's head. But your
Right.
education allows you to at least help us unpack and try to make sense of the things that we can't make sense of.
Listen, I did a couple of clips, couple of posts on, and I always weave in the sociology of sport. That failing up of Kevin Stefanski, listen, it needs to be studied, but the reality is it's already been studied. It's under the subfield, the sociology of sport. And it talks about this play and how race comes into play with who's being hired, who is the head coach, who's the offensive coordinator. All of that stuff is in a field. And so I know everybody wasn't a sociology major. And I literally try to weave that in because people think that it's just an opinion, but there's a reason that some people are failing up within, sports, and why somebody else is not.
Interesting. And so I think many of us would look at sports as the great kind of even plane, right? It's a society that we hope represents more of this meritocracy, right?
Yes.
Where it's about who runs faster, you or me, or who's stronger, you or me. But you're saying that there's a subtext to that, to even where that's not the case, that there's that this country's original sin even shows up in that space where it's about race.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because you got to think about if I did, I love the Lamar Jacksons of the world, Jalen Hurts, right? 20 years ago, people were still saying, in hushed tones that we couldn't have black quarterbacks because they didn't have the processing, the mental processing power that say a white quarterback had. That's 20 years ago. You start Randall Cunningham really scrambled his way into them looking at quarterbacks, black quarterbacks in a different way. Yeah, I'm not denying Warren Moon, all right? I'm not denying Doug Williams, but I'm saying that Randall Cunningham's athleticism, the way he would run, really gave birth to people like a Mike Vick, right? But I'm trying to tell people when you start looking into history, we had less and less quarterbacks, and it was because the stereotype of the black quarterback was that black men could not process. They couldn't be out on the field and think that far ahead. They could, you know what I mean? Yeah, they could run the ball, but could they think and set up the play? They couldn't do it. And that is a race-based ideology, and that's
Right.
in the sociology of sports. So absolutely.
So to those that would push back and say that was a narrative at one point, however, they would bring up names, Russell Smith, Geno Smith, excuse me, Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, um, as you said, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, so on and so on and so on, and saying that may have been a narrative one time before, but not now. What would you say to that?
I would say that we've come a long way, and it's not the narrative as much right now. But then you have to look at Shador Sanders. And then you see him playing the last couple of games of the season, and he's throwing all the way down. He's doing all this, and we're saying, wait, but weren't they saying he couldn't read the plays and he didn't understand the offense? Isn't that what they're saying?
Hmm.
So yes, we do have Jalen and we do have Lamar and we have all these different people, but look at how they just treated Shador Sanders. Isn't part of the talk that came out of Cleveland was that, oh, we got to teach him. He's not there. He's not there yet. That's historically what they've said about black quarterbacks. So
Okay.
we're not as far. Do you feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Right.
then when we start talking about, I love doing the Shador Sanders post because I like to stir the pot sometimes. And boy, I'm telling you, them haters, like, why do y'all dislike Dion? Dion brought money to the league. He brought attention to the league. He brought sheer athleticism. For folks to hate on his son, how many years later is it?
Right.
It's
Right.
it's 20. I think it's been 20 years or something since he hung up his cleats.
Sure.
That there's something to that. There's something to that. And I just think race is a part of it.
Right. And so let's stay here in Dion for a bit. And so you essentially framed why you think folks there's this level of visceral hate towards Deion Sanders. Um, but you think it's race. Um, is it at all maybe mixed in there with people have I guess maybe folks kind of a bit more drawn to those of us who are humble, right? That are a bit more gracious in victory, that we view and that we view God-given God-given talent as something that we should kind of give back to Him and praise Him for giving us this ability to be able to do what we do. And Dion maybe kind of illustrates it like it's him, all him, and that he did it all by himself. You think is there maybe a tinge of that, or maybe more than a tinge of that? Do you think that has anything to do with it as well?
Well, I think that people definitely feel that Dion is full of himself, but I do think that Dion does acknowledge his God-given talent, right? And I think that, one of the things that I feel Coach Prime does is he teaches the importance of confidence. And that's something that God would want, athletes and everyday people to have because you always have people who want to tear you down. And without confidence, you're a weak opponent, right? Because someone's already tearing you down. I think there are a lot of reasons that people don't like successful black men who come out of sports, right? You have money, you might have your education, and you've beat the system, right? You're not in handcuffs. So I think a lot of that. I did a video I think you saw about involved Black fathers. Dion plays into that. There's this narrative that Black men are not involved in their kids' lives. I think I have like 40,000 comments or something from that video from YouTube as well as Instagram or what have you. People want people that they control. So if I'm the average Joe Blow recruiter and I'm used to dealing with a Black single mom, and here dad's shows up, and dad's like, you know what? Nah, that doesn't sound good. I was a D1 athlete. You got to change how you're coming to that person. So I have had just comments upon comments where Black men talk about when they're involved and they're doing stuff, they're trying to go have lunch with their kids, they're being turned away for engaging
Mm,
their own kids. You can't tell me that's not also part of it. This narrative of separating the father from the family, which, as you know, is also part of sociology.
right, right,
Not
right.
funny, but it's just it's a fact. And so that Dion piece for me, Prime represents all the things that people, that a lot of, and I hate to make it all about race, but some white men really resent. You're attractive, you got money, your sons are close to you, you're involved in their lives, and you show up. You do what you say you're going to do, and a lot of people want to tear that down and they can't.
Interesting. I'll tell you this much. It is for me must see TV. I'm originally from the East Coast. I got no business, tuning into Colorado games, but I cannot not watch them, right? Like there is an effect. You're drawn into it. You want to see. I don't have a. I tune in believing I don't have a dog in that fight, and all of a sudden I'm rooting for Colorado Buffaloes. I've got no connection to Colorado. But
Same.
but yeah, so I do kind of root for him and root for the team, if you will. So that's really kind of interesting. So and he talked about, and I think that's kind of what you were also kind of alluding to is, he made news by talking about the death threats that he receives consistently, to where it really kind of just shows where I think the level of hate towards him. And so, do you believe that that's there? That's going to be there regardless. Listen, he could win the college football championship, and you think those folks, whoever they are, will continue to dislike him regardless of the level of success?
Yes, I do, because as I shared in my video about this, there's this sense of entitlement, right? There's this distortion where people are sort of looking and they're resenting the life that he's living and they feel that they should have it for themselves, right? And you have people almost with this stalker mentality that really look at him and are like, well, why not me? He stole my life when they've never even played football. They've never even attempted to coach. And so we know mental illness a lot of times comes in with these, death threats. And let's face it, a lot of people want to be famous. I've always said, just send me the check. Nobody has to know who I am. Just send me the check. Favorite 3 words, cut the check. So, but a lot of people love this fame thing, and fame elevates you and it puts a target on your back. And people, listen, whatever Colorado pays Prime, they done made their money back. They up. They up.
Right,
Okay. They up. All right.
right,
But people cannot, you know what I'm saying? Like, people can't separate. This is a business. He was an investment. They've already made their money and got years on the contract.
right.
Right.
Yeah,
And so knowing that people don't look at the real, the data behind it, the statistics, the facts of what's real, they made their money. And are those people still gonna hate? Yup.
yeah. Interesting. So I want to touch on a couple of topics kind of in the news. Let's stay with in sports. So one of the big things that came out, the football HOF released their inductees, and an incredible shock to all of us was Bill Belichick didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
And I know that you cover this.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to even go with this. And so I'll just ask in very broad terms, what? Like what happened, in your opinion, why did this happen? Why did this take place?
Well, again, the pettiness of people, right? Like, and this is again to bring in Shador, and it's a great sociological problem, right? Do you know how many times when I've done a video about Shador and I talk about the ineptitude of Kevin Stefanski, do you know the Kevin Stefanski supporters will quote me that he's a two-time AP Coach of the Year, right? Which is a media award. The AP journalists vote and you get it. You know how many times? You know how many times Belichick got that award? Three. He got
Uh,
it three, and he still can't get into the hall on the first ballot.
Interesting.
They
Interesting.
have a problem with Belichick's gruffness. They have a problem with this young woman. I mean, he's 80. I think she's like 5. I don't know. But they got a problem with that. You know what I mean? And they just don't like him. I mean, they didn't like him enough to give him a head coaching job. Again, never met the man. He could be all the things that they're saying he is, but you know what he still is? The second most winningest coach in the history of the NFL after Don Shula. And if he doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot, nobody does. You got
Interesting.
doggone Dick Vermeil from the Phillies, from the Eagles, like, dang, should I be in the Hall? No, you should not. If Bill Belichick can't be in. But it speaks to, and this is why when we talk about collusion again with, Shador, and we talk about some of the questionable things that the NFL does, you can see they probably do this because why is this man not in the Hall of Fame? They
Sure.
make their own case.
Sure.
Because it doesn't make sense. And it seems like we were outraged, a lot of the fans. And again, I like Tom Brady. I wasn't necessarily a Belichick fan, but even I could see it was wrong.
Right.
So
Right. And so this is classic. I don't know if classic, but for you, this is classic Revenge of the Nerds, right?
yeah,
This is
absolutely.
the kid
Popularity
who was
contest.
last picked, right? The last kid picked, and his entree or her entree into sports was to cover it as a journalist. And so now, right, here's their opportunity to exact some revenge or something like that. Interesting. All
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. And I just think that level of pettiness when you start talking about the people in the hall and the journalists involved, like all those folks, they just are next level pettiness. And this is why I blanketly support mostly all of the sports guys who now the Matt Barnes of the world, Steven Jackson of the world. I
Mm,
support them becoming journalists in their own way, podcasters in their own way, because they are bringing the blood, sweat, and tears from their actual playing days instead of these pundits who've never dribbled, never hit a home run. They've never, you know what I'm saying? And listen, I'm not the most athletic person either, but listen, I know my place. These other people do not. And that's the problem. A lot of jealousy. Oh my
right.
goodness. A
Right.
lot of jealousy. And that's what it comes down. And the hall should be ashamed. And if there's an exception to the rule, it should be made. You talking about Don Shula is turning over in his grave right now.
Right.
Because if you deny Belichick, what are you saying also about his stats of being the number one most winningest? And they don't like to look at what it says about the organization on the whole, but it's saying a lot.
Wow. I love that. Transitioning from sports, let's move over into entertainment. Also filling out feeds and Twitter space um, was the dust up between Corey Holcomb and oh my gosh, I'm drawing a complete blank against this brother.
Christina Payne.
There you go, Christina Payne, which I thought was incredibly interesting because there was this narrative, right? This is what happened, and I'm gonna stand on this. And just looking at it, right, you're like, wow, okay. Fast forward now, there's some video evidence and some other stuff, and it's like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
my bad, okay.
Yeah.
What happened, Miss Yasmin?
Well, I mean, what happened was what I think happened. Let me just say, listen, this is what I think happened. And Christina happened to see my video after I put it up. But what happened was they got into an altercation, and she did not have the video to prove what she said. So we have a he said, she said. And that's
Right.
why anyone checking out the Yasmin Breakdown, you're going to hear me say, have your receipts, turn your phone on. You know what I mean? Like, I will say this to people all the time, have your mans in them recording, okay? Because you never know when you're going to need it, right? And so what I feel happened is they had an altercation or whatever, and as she was saying, I believe, they'll do little trade barbs or whatever after the comedy show or whatever like this, and like almost your mama jokes, right? As I
Right.
understand. And some people, you know what I mean, they up in the kitchen, but they can't stand the heat that's up in the kitchen. And so what does he do? A haymaker to the face. I mean, what is going on? And so people were in my comments meant like, oh, you're never going to give the guy a shot. You're never going, and they're saying to me like, hey, you're taking up for her, but this was thrown out of court. This was thrown out of court already. So what are you doing?
Mm.
But what I want to say to the viewers out there, things are thrown out of court until more evidence comes up. You
Right.
mean to tell me this does not need to be examined again once we see the video? This girl, and then people, and a man said in one of my comments, women, y'all need to watch your mouths because you don't know what kind of man you dealing with. My goodness, I am a widow. My husband was 6'2", muscular, body from God. Let me tell you, I never felt threatened. Now, I'm not the type of woman that's up there trying to like incite violence, but my man, if y'all saw that video, okay, he walked into the circle. Come on now. Come
Right.
on now. We are supporting that. Men of daughters, men with wives, men who are just have cool sister friends. I don't know.
Right.
You're okay. She was not the aggressor.
Sure.
Based on the video. Based on the video. Again, I don't listen, y'all. If the video's a deep fake, I'm taking everything back. Okay?
Right.
But if it's not a deep fake, if the video is to be believed, she was standing there. He walked up. I don't know if he's muscular or chubby. I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? He's still like a guy.
Right. Right. Yeah, he being Corey Holcomb, if there's anyone that's had the worst week ever, right? And so the video comes uh in the backdrop is a contrast to this other verbal altercation that he had with the guest on his show.
Yeah. It was a
I forget
guy. I
that
don't
brother.
remember the guy's name, but I
Yeah, I
know what
forget
you're
that
talking
brother's
about.
name too. So clearly in there, people saw that video and feel like he punked Corey. Yeah, Corey got up, moved his chair, got space. But when Bro got up and said, you know what, let's take this off camera and outside, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Meet me outside.
yeah, outside. Corey didn't go up and follow him, right? And so that's where people are like, okay. So now they're making this comparison. Okay, so
Yeah.
you're swinging on women, right? But when another man calls you out, you're not answering the bell. So I think from
Correct.
that standpoint, um, not the best look for Corey in this.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. And words are words and all of that stuff. But there's a special kind of male, in my opinion, who feels that it's okay to swing on a woman. And again, in my sociology or my education or whatever, it's a low self-esteem guy,
Mm,
right? Because men 99.9% of men are going to be just stronger. I don't care if you skinny. I don't care what you have more muscles. You're strong. Your strength. You got more strength than a woman has. So in your mind, for you to feel that you need to take your already, overpowering body, whatever it is, even if it's thin, you still are stronger. That's insane to me. You know
mm,
what I mean? So that's why I'm always encouraging men to work on themselves, get that self-esteem, get your head, you know what I'm saying? Get your mindset right, because to swing on this chick, what Corey did, or in that video, again, if it's not a deep fake, if we're to believe it, he just punched her straight in the face.
right.
And it was was shocking.
So to just to be clear, just for my edification,
Yeah.
you're talking in terms of a man, any
Yeah.
man, striking a woman,
Right.
or are you suggesting that a man shouldn't hit a woman no matter what, even if she strikes him first?
Well, first of all, I don't think women should strike men. But what I'm saying is that if a woman was to strike a man, I think he has to excuse himself because he's still stronger than the woman, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? He's still stronger. So I don't think that, like, if a woman hauls off and hits you, then you go and haymaker her because you're still going to be stronger, right? So you don't need to be around anybody who is abusing you. And I worked at a battered women's shelter in college, so I do know men get abused. If someone, and I want to say this to the men or whatever, because a lot of men are in physically abusive situations and relationships, you need to get out. Just because she's smaller than you should not let a woman hit on you. Period. Right. And a lot of men think because they're men, they can take it or whatever. And we had two people who were in interracial relationships, black men, social media, and they were unalived by their white partners. Okay, so I do not think so. I don't think men should hit women, and I don't think women should hit men. And if that jumps off, I think you got to excuse yourself because a lot of times the media is going to paint the man as the bad guy even when he's not the aggressor. So I don't think there is a winning position when a man, even if a chick hits him first, I don't think he wins because the optics of it is going to make him appear a certain way. So I say he leaves hey, you at home, you going outside, you leaving, you whatever. But to get into fisticuffs with a woman, I don't know how you win that because you can't win in the eye of court of what a public opinion. You can't
Right.
win that.
Got it. So woman hits a man, he shouldn't hit her back. I want to say thank you in advance for helping me go viral on that one because people are definitely going to respond to that. So,
They're gonna be coming for me in the comments. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all.
next, the game. The game. He had some. I love what you the reporting out that you did on this story. As Game said, when a black man sees a baddie, right? It is his duty to slay that booty. Okay, for those of you who remember, She's Gotta Have It movie. Um, wh-
Yeah.
so, so in short, essentially, the game during an interview, and keep me honest, essentially was saying what a man's reaction is to seeing a really attractive woman, that he has
Yes.
a penchant for wanting to get her pregnant with his child.
Yes.
What say you to that?
I think the game is letting us know what his inner workings are, the way that he thinks, right? And that was what was important in this particular story. Just he said black men, but what he really meant to say was the game. And I think that putting this idea that all black men are out there thinking, oh, I must, I see her, I'm going to impregnate her and her and her, and she got a baby, and she got, how they doing it? She got a baby, she got a baby, she got a baby. I do not think all black men are doing that. And the statistics show, again, 54% of black men don't have any children at all. So clearly they have seen baddies, and it's something like 16.5% have one child. And so a lot of times we're in this era of time where we love quoting celebrities, we love following what celebrities are doing or what have you. But everyday folks are not following that. And so, sure, we can say, check out the game and what his opinion is. And we can give him that. We can say, oh, okay, that's what the game feels. But let's not put that label on black male population on a whole. And so that was why that video was super important, and we appreciate his opinion, but that's not every black man.
Right. I don't know if you've heard this, but I remember hearing or reading. Actually, I did read this stat, and I don't know if it's true or not. And again, I'll say it again. You keep me honest. Where it was something like 17% of black men are fathers to something like 80% of 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 the women with children. I'm butchering. Let me restate that.
Yeah.
So 80% of women have multiple babies with 17% of the men. And this is within our community. So it's a small concentration of men that have multiple children. And so I think the point that folks that statistic supports is that women are having multiple children with the same man, right? And so maybe there is a thinking that the game has, right? That exists amongst a part of our community, whether it's the game or Nick Cannon, to where it's a person that has this man has multiple children with multiple women. But to your point, there's an entire community of black men that are not partaking in that.
Right.
And I'm not here casting moral judgment one way or the other, just talking about it from a standpoint of saying, hey, there's maybe a group that sees it like the game, and there's a group of men that do not.
Right, absolutely. And I think the percentage though, I don't have that stat in front of me that you're talking about with women having multiple multiple kids by the same dudes essentially, but I could see how that could be a statistic, but the way he said it, it needs to be sort of framed a little bit differently if we're going to actually apply it. Now, for the women out there, like I don't see the attraction if a man if my young sisters out here are listening, if a man has already created two broken homes or he has two baby mamas, why do I want to be the third baby mama? Because here's my thing, right? A leopard for the most part doesn't change his spots. So ever how he treated his commitment to your relationship with the first person, what did he do with the second person? So now let's just talk about the odds. So 50% of it, right, the two he already has, he's already shown he's not going to be a dedicated partner. So why are you the third baby mama
Yeah,
or the
that's
fourth or the fifth? For me, in terms of how I think of things in my life, like why would I be the third or fourth baby mama? Now you the first baby mama, you don't have any data. You don't have
right,
any data that says what kind of person that he is. You the third baby mama and he didn't break up with you after y'all had a baby. He's already done this. There was a pattern already.
right. Well, I'll say this much: if part of the game's point is you see a beautiful woman and you want to get with her, I would say 100% of the men walking the earth are afflicted with that same disease. I mean, duh, like of course she's beautiful. You want to, but I think it's that next part of hey, I want to make a kid. So that's I think that's a bit much, and I agree with you from that standpoint. On the I guess on the woman's side. Um, this person has shown you who they are and what their behavior is going to be. And I thought it was interesting the way that you said how they've, I guess, broken the home, right? They've created multiple broken homes. What makes you think
Right.
that yours isn't going to turn out the same way?
Well, absolutely. And that's why I always encourage women and men as well. What do you want out of the relationship, right? Like, not what they're going to give you, but what do you want, right? And if you don't know what you want, you're going to accept anything, right? But if you go into the relationship saying, hey, I don't actually want to have kids unless I feel like we're going to be married, then get married first if that's what you want. If you're like, hey, I don't want to have kids at all, then you know what I mean? But I think sometimes we're looking at the celebrity. Oh, he's a celebrity. Oh, he's going to treat me so and so and so. Nah, he already did this already.
Mm,
He already did this already. So I just want, men and women out there, looking to be in relationships to be strategic and tactical in terms of seeing the whole picture.
sure.
Because you're passing whatever it is, if it's functional and it's working well or it's dysfunctional, you're passing that on to your child.
Excellent point. So last question for me, Asmund, is Don Lemon. Don Lemon, I mean, just filled up everyone's feed. He was arrested essentially for what's being charged. The charges are he was in violation of the FACE Act, and there was another charge there, but essentially for kind of summarizing for our viewers, he was, as he said, covering a protest. But what happened is they crossed the threshold went inside of a church, which is a big no-no in this country. The KKK Act was the other charge that he's being charged with. So the government's position is he was doing more than just covering it and being a journalist. He was actually, by definition, an accessory before the fact. He knew what the plan was. He was there. He was around it. At some point, you see where he's on camera and he's telling the cameraman to turn it off so as not to disclose the plans where others would hear it. And so they feel like he's now trying to hide behind the fact that he had a camera and a microphone. But they said he was certainly more complicit in this. Uh, so this is an incredibly divisive um, story with folks on either side. What's your overall opinion of this and kind of where do you land on this?
Well, history teaches us that when the government starts coming after journalists, it's going to be a short time before they're coming for you. And so, what people have to understand is in times of crisis, you really need to lean on your journalists to show you what's going on. And if we attack them for doing their jobs, and I saw it as him doing his job, right? That's a problem because look at how many journalists are getting silenced or being unalived because of them doing a job to expose something. So when people start just going, oh, well, he did this and he did this and he did, what was he trying to show you? Right? So we're participating, it seems like, in the silencing of a journalist. And this is someone who's been doing this for 30 years, right? So he's not someone who doesn't know the landscape of what he's doing, right? So you got to lean a little bit on, okay, well, he's been doing this for 30 years. So I feel like they're trying to silence him. That's what it feels like to me. And in times where, people are talking about there's an authoritarian a government structure coming in and this and this and that, this is how people are silenced by attacking the media. And so I'm very cautious. I mean, if they can prove he broke this law, broke this law, broke this law, broke this law, that's one thing. But just blanketly of how it appeared to me that they're trying to silence him and silence journalists that don't agree with the government or don't agree with the president. We had with people with Renee Good and I believe Preddy, who we know was unalived by ICE, shot 10 times, as I understand. Um, People who recorded that just standing there were also detained. Why is that the case? Can I not, as a U.S. citizen, hold my phone? I'm just out here on the street. So again, when you're being detained and you're being arrested now for something that, wait, is this against the law? We have to wonder, well, wait a minute, what's happening here? And I don't think enough of us are asking what's happening.
Right. So what do you say to those that say that he had a moral responsibility to alert authorities because he was privy to this information before it happened, right? So meaning like there was a crime that was going to be committed. Do you agree with that? Should he or a journalist um, have a kind of blanket approach to, hey, if I'm aware of a crime before it's committed, I report this out, or do I arbitrarily sit back and decide which crimes I speak up about before they happen? In other words, violating the KKK and FACE acts are okay, but if someone were planning a murder, then I would have said something. Or is it all sins are created equal? Where are you on that?
I mean, that's a tough question because when you ask the question, should they alert authorities, if they're witnessing authorities gunning down people or what have you, which authorities are you talking about them alerting? So again, in a time where it seems like the government and we're, like there's just so much upheaval, what are we supposed to do? And that's the confusing part. Like that's what I'm saying. So I don't actually have like idea of like, well, should he have called? Should he have done this? But what if you see them doing something like in this particular thing in Minnesota? I believe the pastor was like the head of like I think ICE in that area or something like that. So now that's kind of conflictual, isn't it? Because you're a church leader who should have no dog in the fight, but you also play this pivotal role as being a member of ICE. Isn't that sort of confusing also?
I,
So
I,
see that
right.
that's where and so that's why I'm saying like we're looking at these things in such black and white terms, but if you have the leader of a church who is a significant and in a significant position or role at ICE, that seems really confusing to me from where I'm sitting. Like I wouldn't know what to do myself. I would be like, okay, which way do I go? Like, is he acting as a pastor or is he acting as a member of ICE, even though we're technically in this church building?
Interesting.
It's a real question to have.
Okay. And so I know I said that was my last question, but here's, I mean it
It's
this time, my
okay.
last question. So what should we, so you do such a great job, as I said at the opening, with curating stories, identifying kind of what we should all be looking at, focused on. What should we be looking at? What do you think, what's a story that you see maybe kind of growing legs and something that you can tell our viewers to say, hey, here's something you may want to keep an eye on?
Well, I definitely think we should pay attention to the Don Lemon story and any story where you have people who are, historical journalists, been in the game for a long time, and now they're being arrested or they're being silenced in a certain way. We need to pay attention, right? Because we want to be able to get the news. I think it's also very important, like people like Nicki Minaj, celebrities who are sort of saying some really incendiary things. My video was about her calling for this black man journalist to be arrested. And I felt like, wait a minute, is this her role? She was not even a US citizen. Is this your role? You know what I'm saying? I feel like we have got to be mindful of the role of how we're allowing celebrities to dictate what we think and feel. Right. And so those are two things. Celebrities, what are they saying? Because, we're talking about a lack of integrity right now. People are saying things because of money. They're saying things for all these different things. You've got to be looking for people in your feed that have integrity. And so please make sure you look for the Yasmin Breakdown and Yasmin Shiraz on YouTube so that you can, get some integrity in your feed because that's what we really are missing. There's even when you start talking about sports, look for the why and people were saying things. I was very disappointed with how I felt Stephen A. Smith came after LeBron
Mm,
last year. I know that's not new news, but I did some stuff. I did some impersonations. I did some whole bunch of stuff on that because I think it's become personal and there's some jealousy involved in there. And we've lost a sense of integrity for a lot of people who are reporting, quote unquote, the news or entertainment. So just look for people with integrity.
yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I love that you said that, and it gives us, I think gives us an opportunity to go back to what really matters, right? Start
Yeah.
talking about integrity. One of the stories I think is probably worth kind of keeping an eye on is just me. At the core, I'm a hip hop head. And so it's kind of looking at, it's like Jim Jones against the world, right? So there's Jim Jones and Cameron. You see these shots verbal shots, let's be clear on that
Yeah.
kind of verbal shots going back and forth, and it's Jim Jones and Dame Dash, and then it's Jim Jones and Fifth. I just hope that it stays to where it's just verbal shots, right? You've got these things can sometimes blow up and turn into something much bigger, much different. And oftentimes it's not the folks themselves, but their teams, right? The folks that are down with their camps. So I hope it doesn't evolve evolve into something much more than that. Yeah, that's kind of like in the back of my mind. I kind of see this thing every now and then it kind of bubbles up where it seems funny at times, but as my mom always said, there's seriousness in jest, right? Like you say
Yes.
it and you're
Yeah,
laughing,
and
but
the
you
best
really mean
comedians,
that.
yeah, and the best comedians are serious people. Let me just chime in on that real fast. I receive you on the hip hop stuff, but you know the funniest thing, growing up, loving hip hop, you know, doing all the things, I have been very disappointed with a lot of the hip hop journalists, right? That not the hip hop journalists, the rappers who quote unquote now they got a podcast or whatever.
Oh,
Not because they don't have a voice. They absolutely have a voice. But so many of them coming up always had so much negative to say about actual hip hop journalists. And, you know, they wanted you to keep it at this level and keep it a buck and keep it at, and they have become some of the most pettiest reporters on their podcast. You know what I'm saying? And what
right.
I mean by that is like, why are we trading barbs over something we should not even be trading barbs over,
True.
right? So a lot of our, you know, some of our folks, like, they were great MCs. They were great for what they did, and they had, you know, you listening to them, you know, as a listener, you see the big picture or whatever. Then they come on their podcast, and it's just like, you know what I mean? It's low lying fruit. It's low lying fruit. So for me, when it comes to hip hop rappers turn podcasters and so forth like that, I would love their content on their podcast to feel as dope. I like Joe and Jada. I would like it to feel as dope as their rhymes. And for me, I just haven't seen a lot of that.
Awesome. I love that. Yasmin, I could do this all day with you. Unfortunately, I'm going to be sensitive to your time and stuff. Listen, thank you so much. You have an open invitation to join us, and we certainly hope that you certainly will. It's been an absolute treat for me and our audience. Yasmin, thank you for joining the J&K Show, and we'll be in touch with you real soon.
Thanks for watching the J&K Show.